You know, I'm not even angry. I'm just very discouraged. For the Freisters who know me... For the Freisters who know me, this video might be somewhat out of character. For the Freisters who've never met me, don't judge my channel based on this video alone. Check out some of my other videos. If you've never met me before, I'm Viva Frei, a Montreal litigator turned YouTuber. I've been making YouTube videos for over 4 years. I have a number of themes on my channel: Montreal Mondays, cooking videos, fishing videos, and law vlogs. VLAWGS. I make law vlogs where I impart some of the knowledge and experience and life lessons I've acquired in over a decade of commercial litigation. Last week I was putting together a list of 15 rules I had learnt in the practice of law as to how to identify an enemy from a friend. And at first I was reluctant to use the word enemy because of everything that it implies and the idea that you have to vanquish and destroy your enemies. At first I was going to go with adversary, but it wasn't a fair description because adversaries are not the same thing as enemies. In that an enemy is not looking for the truth, an enemy is not looking for common ground, an enemy is looking to win. Whereas an adversary, although the opposing party, could still nonetheless be in pursuit of the actual truth. And timely as it was, the Covington... For those of you who've never met me either, I got 2 dogs, one of whom is paralyzed. This is how they play. At the same time I was putting together this list, this whole Covington Catholic kids situation with the native elder explodes, makes national media attention everywhere. And for those of you who have been living under a rock and don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just going to post a link actually to a Philip DeFranco video where he pretty accurately summarizes how the situation started, evolved, and where it's at now. When I first saw the initial posts on social media, I had pretty much the same reaction that everyone else in the world had. Disappointment at the kids from what the situation appeared to be. When there are individuals who are identifiable representatives of that group or organization and they misbehave, they don't just reflect poorly on themselves, they reflect poorly on the entire organization or group. So when I first started reading the stories and I was like, geez, these kids are wearing MAGA hats and misbehaving, and don't they realize the stereotypes that they are reinforcing? I had those feelings. I didn't jump on social media, start calling for doxing, identification, harassment. I had these feelings, I had these thoughts, and I didn't immediately and reflexively post them to social media. And as the situation would evolve, it would become clearer that the initial story wasn't the entire story. And this is something that I say in law all the time. In law, you have 3 sides of the story: the plaintiffs, the defendants, and the truth. And usually the truth is somewhere in between the plaintiff side and the defendant side. So the situation evolves and the nuances of the situation come out, which might allow a lot of people to come back on their initial reflexive reactions, and they do. One of whom is Philip DeFranco himself, who initially came out and condemned the Covington Catholic kids, and then coming out with a tweet saying he may have gotten it wrong, and a 17-minute video explaining what actually happened and how the reaction of Philip DeFranco and so many others was in fact inaccurate. And the thing is, you have people taking to social media without the slightest second thought about the repercussions of what they're doing. You have Kathy Griffin calling for the doxing and the identification and the sanctioning of these boys. And this is not a left or a right thing. This happens on both sides, and it is the power and the danger of social media is that you can mobilize thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people with a tweet that may in fact not be entirely accurate. You can mobilize people with a tweet that may be accurate, but the effect of mobilizing a massive amount of people can be potentially dangerous. And people on social media, just after the tweets and the retweets and the internet points, the more antagonizing the post, the more interaction and the more engagement it gets, and the more valorized people get for having made those tweets without thinking about the other people on the other end of it, the repercussions, and how things can go terribly wrong quickly. And then you have the people, instead of admitting that they made a mistake and they rushed to judgment, doubling down on their initial mistake. Or, like Philip DeFranco did, sort of shifting the targets. I may have gotten it wrong, but I stand for my message against hate. And I told Philip DeFranco, if your pursuit against hate involves publicly executing innocent people, you may be part of the problem and not part of the solution. You don't need to sacrifice innocent people to make a message that everyone should obviously agree with, and those who don't agree with the message are never going to agree with the message. But something about Philip DeFranco's last video left a lot of people seemingly unfulfilled, because following him on Social Blade today, he's lost thousands of subscribers. Something was missing from correcting the story, and that was an actual apology. Not an apology for having gotten the story wrong, an apology to the victims of having gotten the story wrong. Now, I can understand people who say, I saw enough to cast judgment. I can understand that. I may or may not agree with the ability to demonize human beings based on a 30-second video you've seen on the internet, but I can understand if that's your feeling. But to the extent that people like Philip DeFranco are willing to correct the story, I find it discouraging that they're not willing to simply also apologize to the people who were the victims of the inaccurate story to begin with. And this brings me back to one of the fundamental conclusions that I came to after over a decade of practicing commercial litigation. The fundamental problem with the practice: people are not after the truth. Law, like politics, is purely partisan. Admittedly, you represent your client, but your representation of your client should be subordinate to the truth. And the problem in law is that you can't admit a mistake without it being exploited by opposing counsel. You can't admit a mistake without it being seen as a mark of weakness. And in politics, admitting you made a mistake and apologizing for it is not seen as a victory for the truth, it's seen as a partisan defeat. And it's discouraging. The willingness to take to social media to lambaste people, the willingness of people to be unfairly judgmental just because it's a thumb click away, is discouraging. The reckless willingness to use social media not as a tool but as a weapon is discouraging. And what's really discouraging is I want people to be better, but I feel that this message is the same thing as preaching against hate. It will never change the people who are never going to change, and the people who know it already don't need to hear it.
Look at this cute little doggy's face. Look at you, so sweet. Yeah.
I don't do politics on my channel because I've always said that politics is like either preaching to the choir or talking to deaf ears. Social media is not the right place to have political discussions. They're meant to be done in person. They're not meant to be done with a maximum of 140 characters, where the incentive is thumbs up retweets, and where what tends to get that is sass, insults, oversimplifying and demonizing of fundamentally complex and multifaceted human beings. People are not fundamentally good or evil based on a 15-second video on the internet. They're not fundamentally good or evil because of a tweet. Social media is no longer social when it is used as a weapon to destroy, intimidate, threaten, abuse. I hope that something of an uplifting and positive message comes out of this so that it's not just me complaining and ranting in the camera. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace out.